Hi, David. Congratulations on winning the 11-second club this month. My name's Jay Jackson. I've been a mentor at Animation Mentor for at least 5 or 6 years. I'm not sure exactly. I've been an animator for about 35 years. I've worked in all sorts of different animation styles. I started at Disney in around 1980 and went through training with Eric Larson, who was one of Disney's 9 old men. And I've worked at Disney for quite a while on films like The Little Mermaid, Tarzan, Hercules. Then I learned computer animation and worked on films like Monster House and Open Season, The Aviator. I've also worked a little bit at DreamWorks. Those were done at Sony, by the way. I've also worked at DreamWorks on Kung Fu Panda, Secrets of the Furious 5. And for the last few years, I've been doing a lot of freelance work, educational films for Disney, TV commercials for Safeway, McDonald's. Worked on a few games like Skylanders and Ratchet and Clank from Heroes on the Move. And so I've done a little bit of flash animation, which I've noticed is what, I'm pretty sure that's what you did your piece in this month, so that's cool. I'm actually working in Flash right now doing animatics for, again, educational films. So I do have some experience in Flash. Also worked a little bit on the Mr. Men show for one season, which was Flash animation. So I know a little bit about the limitations of Flash and how you really want to go for the simple statement and keep the rigs very simple. So I appreciate that, and I'll try to give you comments that are appropriate for that. Okay. So let's get started. I'm going to play it once here.
In my opinion, the best thing you can do is find a person who loves you for exactly what you are. Good mood, bad mood. That's the kind of person that's worth sticking with.
Okay, nice work. You made a nice, simple, clear statement. It has a funny payoff. You have a surprise almost at the end. Well, you have a couple of surprises. One is that we don't know who he's talking to. Then, of course, we see that it's a carrot. Then when we come back to him, there's another surprise in that we see the plate and the silverware, like he's getting ready to eat. So I think those are all good ideas. So your sense of entertainment obviously is good, and it got you a lot of votes, which is cool. And you have some nice detail work here. I love the way you have the drink sloshing around in the cup. You know, I think that's a nice little touch. This part right here, every time you kind of move it around. Okay, so I'll tell you one of the first things I noticed that I would suggest you think about is the squash and stretch on the head. I think I love squash and stretch, but the head is the one place that I keep it very minimal. And I think that if it can easily feel like sort of a water balloon. And there are a few times like that when I found it distracting when the head kind of blobbed, you know, kind of squashed and stretched. I think, let's see if right there is kind of the main one. He does this accent right here, and everything comes forward, and then the head kind of squashes. It feels, to me, right there, it feels kind of balloony.
Exactly what you are.
So, I mean, part of that is a stylistic preference. So I'm just kind of telling you that that's my feeling, is that it's a little distracting. I mean, I like the fact that you're not keeping him totally rigid, but I would probably, well, I'll tell you what I would rather see is more movement in the ears and less in the head. You know, a character's head, you know, we know that there's a skull in there. In more realistic animation, we know there's a skull, and that is something that isn't very squashable. And the ears are soft, and so they could flop around a lot. And of course, the other place you can get more variation in the facial structure would be in the jaw. But you know, with a really simple character like this, you don't want to get into that kind of detail, separating the jaw and stuff. But anyway, I do think this would be cool if you had more time and if you had the inclination to, you know, add a little more flop to the ears. I think that would add some humor and help loosen things up a bit. So let's see. That's one of my general comments. The other, this gets into a more fussy thing, but there are just a few spots that I found distracting where I felt like the nose floated just a bit on the face, and I'm not sure exactly. I think, okay, let's see. Sorry. Oh, there we go. Okay. I have my fingers on the wrong buttons on my keyboard. Okay. Okay, so it's right here. You've got this sort of stretch on the nose, which to me is a bit much. I would probably tone that down a bit. But what really bothers me, I think, is at the end of this move is the way the nose freezes right there at frame 54. And then the head keeps moving, and the nose is sort of stuck in one spot. It kind of ruins the illusion to me that the nose is, you know, is a part of his face, or that it's sort of solidly attached. Well, it's actually through this whole section here, because I'm feeling like the eyes are moving and the mouth is moving, but the nose seems kind of on its own path a bit. See, there was another spot right here. Well, anyway, that's something, you know, if you wanted to spend a little more time, I would just try to go and make sure that that nose stayed in alignment with his eyes. Another general comment I have, and I think this could really help you in your dialogue in the future, is this is one of the things I learned way back at Disney. It's kind of one of the dialogue rules, and you can find it in The Illusion of Life if you have that book by Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnston. There's a really good section in there of Dialogue Principles by Ham Lusk, who was a Disney animator before The 9 Old Men. And anyway, one of the principles is that when you get to the end of a word or a phrase, that you kind of keep the mouth shape that you hit at the very end of that. You keep it for a while. You don't immediately close the mouth. And if you study dialogue, you know, study a clip from a movie and look at the actor's mouth, you'll find that you'll become more aware of that. So let me look at this and give you an example here.
In my opinion,
Okay, that one's not too bad. You say opinion and then you close the mouth. So, well, let's just keep going.
The best thing you can do is find a person.
There's one. The best thing you can do is See there, I think you would have been better off to keep an S kind of mouth. Like what I would do is close the mouth slightly, but give the feeling that there's still teeth in there. You probably don't want to have, I guess, yeah, you're not really showing the line between the teeth, but you are indicating that there are teeth there. Let's just zoom in a little bit here. Well, anyway, I think you get the idea there. I just wouldn't rush to close the mouth to, like where it's like an M mouth, you know, because if you say that line,
the thing you can do is,
you know, it's perfectly acceptable to just keep that Z mouth and not close it to an M mouth.
Find a person who loves you, for example. Find a person who loves you.
There's another place. A person who loves you. See, if I say that, I hope you can see my face well enough. Find someone who loves you. Someone who loves you. So I would just hit the ooh mouth and then just sort of relax it a little bit, but not close it. You know, it could just be something like that. And I would keep it there probably for quite a while.
Who loves you for exactly what you are.
Yeah, you could just keep it ooh for exactly, you know, you don't ever have to close it really if you don't want to during that whole pause before he starts to speak again.
For exactly what you are.
So again there, exactly what you are. What you are. See, I don't close my mouth into an M mouth there at the end. I keep it just, I would just go into kind of a relaxed, slightly open mouth like that, if I were you.
Good mood, bad mood. That's the kind of person that's worth sticking with. That's the kind of person that's worth sticking with.
Worth sticking with. Yeah, there again, at the end of that, I would probably just end with the mouth slightly open like that, rather than with. So you could show teeth in there or whatever you want to do, but yeah. Okay, so anyway, that's sort of one of my general comments, like I said. Okay. Let's back out a little bit here. Okay, in terms of the acting, I think your inclinations are good. You're hitting the accents well. I like that. I like this pose that you go into, and I assume that the idea there is that he's resting his head on his hand, right? Sort of like I'm doing. Because of the lack of detail in the character, in the model idea, you know, it's a little harder to read. I don't know if yeah, that probably wouldn't work. I'm just trying to think of ways I might resolve that. It kind of would be nice to see to get the feeling that there's a hand there kind of overlapping his chin. I'm not sure that I like any of my solutions so far, but that's one thing I would probably have kind of played around with, and maybe you did and decided that it just didn't look good in any of those. But anyway, the other thing about that is you go into that pose right here, and then you sort of come out of it very quickly. And I think you could have stayed in that longer, and I think it'd be nicer. So what I would do is just keep the feeling that the hand or the head is kind of resting on the hand longer through this next part right here, and then maybe you drop it when he lifts his head up. So like maybe there's when you go down into this pose. So let's see, I'm trying to think how else you could do this. And of course you have a nice feeling of softness in him by not having a lot of detail, so it's a question of how much detail do you add. Something like that might work. Anyway, just thoughts I'm giving you here. Okay, so there's another issue about this pose, is that I feel like everything hits kind of at once. And I feel like both arms are moving and the head is coming down, and it feels like everything hits around frame 18. So one thing you can do to soften up your holds like that is to offset your keys a bit, so that maybe one hand hits, then a few frames later the other one hits, and a few frames later the head hits its pose. Or maybe not in that order, maybe one hand, the head, and then the other hand, something like that. You could also soften this up, like I mentioned before, with adding a little bit of flop to the ears, which would help.
In my opinion, the best thing you can do is find a person who loves.
Okay, so another thing that sort of distracted me is the eyes, the pupils. At the few points feel out of sync, and I don't know if you did that on purpose or if it's an accident. But for example, right there, and it's very subtle, but I can see that his screen right eye moves and the left one doesn't, and then they both start moving, and then the one on the left moves, finishes its move, while the one on the right is holding still. And I find that distracting. I would sync those up a little better if I were you, because most of the time you have them in sync. I think they're off a little bit right here as well. Yeah, it feels like the one on the right is a couple frames ahead of the one on the left. In general, though, I also want to say that I like the fact that you have the eyes often asymmetrical, and that you have the mouth as an asymmetrical shape. That adds interest and is very cool. Okay, so now when we cut to the carrot, I had to watch this a few times before I could really read what was going on here on this face. I assume that these represent cheeks, but that was not very clear to me. The first time I looked at it, I thought they might be glasses, because these are like little reflections here, and because this looks like, I think you can probably see what I mean about it. It creates the shape of glasses, and also because you've got this big thing here, which kind of looks like a mouth. So, but I'm assuming that really this is the mouth. So I hope I'm right in that assumption. But I think it would be better if you made the mouth a little bigger or a little stronger and toned down the cheeks. And I'm not exactly sure how I would do that. So it's, again, a design issue. But, I mean, it'd be easy enough to make the mouth just a little bigger like that and darker. And if the cheeks were just maybe smaller, And I have this color of orange, so I mean that may not be the right color, but that's something you might want to think about, is playing around with those proportions there to make it more clear. And the other thing is about the carrot is he feels very limited in his ability to move his eyes. Like, I think that it would be more interesting if you started out with the eyes smaller in the very first pose, and both the black and the white of the eyes, so the eyes were just kind of more, see if I can do this real quick. Oh darn, I thought I was doing them on the frame one, but anyway, I would do that on the first frame of this scene, make them smaller like this. Then I would go into my blink the way you do. I would also recommend that you keep that blink pose, this one, for 2 frames, and then pop open, or possibly have one slow out where, let's see,
exactly what you are. Good mood.
well, it's a little distracting now the way, but anyway, I think since you're just going for that kind of shocked look, I think it would be more dynamic if you started with the eyes smaller, held the blink pose for 2 frames, then pop the eyes open. And I like the way you do an overshoot and a settle. I've kind of messed things up. Let's see, I'll get rid of all my stuff. Yeah, you go into kind of an overshoot pose there, and then you settle. You could probably even push that a little bit more if you wanted. You know. And now I think what you want to do, I think what you're saying with this eye movement here is that he's looking down, and I think that could be stronger as well. I think you could just push that a little bit more. If you're, I'm assuming the idea is that he's looking down and seeing the plate and the silverware that because then after we cut and we see this stuff. So it would be like first he's looking at the rabbit and then he looks down at the plate. Well, I guess he'd actually look down even more like this, right? Because the plate would be pretty much across the table from him.
For exactly what you are. Good mood, bad mood.
Yeah, and I'm still distracted by this this shape here. I mean, to me that just seems like so much like a mouth that I keep thinking of that as the mouth. So, and I'm not exactly sure what a good solution there would be. Maybe it would just be to not come so far across the face, or maybe to you know, maybe to just have that come part way there, and maybe another one over here. And then, like I said, if the mouth is a little bigger and a little darker, I think this will all read as his facial features right there. Okay. Though the other thing I would love to see, and it would be very easy to do, I think here, is to have more of a reaction on his leaves up here. His leaves. So like when he, especially when he does his take, I would have them come forward more, and then, eventually settle back into what you have. And in fact, I mean, you could have a little more squash and stretch on his whole body if you wanted for this take idea. And then, of course, that would bring his face down as well. And then he could pop up and do a bit of an overshoot and then settle back in.
Good mood, bad mood. That's the kind of person that's worth sticking with.
I like the acting there. I like this idea of him kind of thinking. This is a great thinking pose. I like the asymmetry, and I like the idea of him sort of shaking the knife around, which is kind of both casual, but also it's kind of menacing because of the fact that it is a knife, and the carrot is, I'm sure, freaked out by that.
Good mood, bad mood. That's the kind of person that's worth sticking with.
So you've got a big accent on the word that. Now, you could make that a lot stronger with an anticipation. Right now, you have a good accent, but you don't have an anticipation really.
That's the kind of person that's worth.
Right, shake, 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 and then you boom, just bring it down. You could just have a couple of frames in there where you lift the knife up before it comes down. Somewhere in here where you just, go up a little bit higher. And then you could probably go down faster. You could probably just keep it up there a little bit. And then slow out. And then come down quicker. Yeah, because you're taking like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or so frames. So you could just come down, anticipate, and then come down in like 1 or 2 frames, and then do a squash if you wanted to. This would just go behind the plate. I would kind of squash that hand and then I would let the knife come back up a little bit, I think.
Good mood, bad mood. That's the kind of person that's worth sticking with.
So that, again, is if you want to get a stronger accent there. Anticipation and a squash would be cool. Okay, those are my main comments. I think you've done a really nice job, and it's entertaining, and I like it. So I hope those thoughts will help you. And that's it for now. Okay, hope to see you again later.